So, Alyse, are you on the bullish side like Jesse Powell or somewhere else on the spectrum?
We're very bullish, both about Bitcoin, the asset, and the underlying protocol. And we have to be because entrepreneurial activity has never been more robust. In fact, we've seen a pickup in sort of the tests that people are willing to take during this period. When the market is more quiet, when we're in a bear market and there's less consumer activity, it's a great time to both dig into the metrics that you've produced in bull market times, as well as to experiment. And that's what we're seeing now from top founders.
What do you make of the merge? Because you saw this news coming out about Coinbase really looking to pause transactions in and around the merge. Clearly, there's going to be some technical difficulties around it as people try to scam others. That was a warning that they sent out. What are you thinking will be the near-term issues, and what is the long-term prospect?
Well, Coinbase is note that they're pausing deposits and withdrawals for ETH. I think is something that's expected, but it points out to us the trade-offs of using a centralized exchange to hold your cryptocurrency. Of course, there's some opportunities in using a custodian, but the advantage is to people using self-custody that they themselves set the rules for how they use their Bitcoin or their ETH or other forms of crypto assets. Now, looking ahead to ETH 2.0, I think that we know that there's risks and that the Ethereum community is hoping that there's great reward. But one of the things to look out for is the centralizing forces of moving from proof of work to proof of stake, of course. We know that the majority of ETH staked, the vast majority of ETH staked, is ETH belonging to these large institutions. And so those folks, of course, are exposed to US regulators and have been tested very recently with OFAC coming out against Tornado Cash. And these same institutions that comprise the majority of staked ETH, in fact, are those that have complied within days to OFAC's sanction of Tornado Cash.
I'm so glad you brought up Tornado Cash, because earlier today, Jesse Powell did say that the shutdown was unconstitutional. I'm wondering how you see this debate really playing out in the market, the good, the bad, and what behaviors might not be accepted among these companies moving forward.
It's hard to know what regulators are going to do, but it's easy to know how centralized institutions are going to respond. They're going to comply. And that's the value, of course, of decentralization. So we know that Bitcoin leads with decentralization. What that means is that when looking at how the protocol is secured, Bitcoin finds it most important to make sure that the protocol is secured in a decentralized fashion and that any individual user can do two things. One, they can validate the code. Bitcoin's core protocol and its payments network protocol are open source. Users can know the rules, the software rules of these systems. But number two, users can participate in validating the accuracy of the ledger themselves. That's something that's much easier to do in Bitcoin than in other protocols. And one of the reasons it's important to be able to do that is sort of being demonstrated by the news of the last couple of weeks and the implications of government's imposition of regulations, for instance, regulations to prevent things like money laundering. We're seeing that happen now with Tornado Cash. And we know that some of the most critical services in the Ethereum space have felt the need to comply and have quickly done so, making users that have received, even passively, transactions from Tornado Cash sort of lose access to services that they depended on.
Alyse, I recently sat down with Coinbase COO Emily Choi to talk about their partnership with Blackrock. Take a listen to what she had to say.
I have wanted to do that Blackrock partnership since the day I joined Coinbase. So for this to come together now, actually, during the crypto winter is such an incredible testament to where we are, where they are, where their customers are. And I think the most important point is it speaks to institutional customers, very traditional institutional customers, wanting to get crypto asset exposure.
She said to expect more partnerships like this, but every day there are more bumps in the crypto road. You know, how is this all impacting? Give us the temperature of investor sentiment, institutional sentiment.
So the BlackRock and Coinbase partnership will launch Bitcoin only. What BlackRock is doing is allowing its institutional investors to participate, to buy Bitcoin and to trade Bitcoin via Coinbase while still using BlackRock's software for management and for risk analysis. This, I think, was a response. We see it as a clear response to the demand of the very traditional institutions that are served by BlackRock. Now, what's important to note here is that providing a new on-ramp in a familiar environment and with familiar tools is likely to act as a very significant catalyst for institutional adoption. I want to flip this for a moment, though, Emily, and say that while we're seeing traditional institutions adopt Bitcoin, like BlackRock, we know that some of the most significant and important adoption of Bitcoin and of Bitcoin's payments network is happening in emerging markets. And so these two forms of adoption are happening simultaneously. And I think add to sort of the fundamental value of Bitcoin that Jesse from Kraken spoke to earlier.